Hello, everybody. Happy Monday, and welcome back to Honors Modern World History with Mr. Stidham. So this is going to be your introductory video / content lecture for the week. So I'm just going to roll through essentially our topics, some of our objectives, and then I'm going to get into a lecture until finally wrapping up with tasks and due dates. So pretty much this is going to provide an overview of Module 1. So you want to make sure that this is everything for the week of November 1st through November 7th. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the topic that we're going to be talking about today is the Protestant Reformation, or the Reformation as it's more commonly known. So some of the objectives that you're going to get from this. So students will be able to identify the causes and effects of the Protestant Reformation, explain the role Martin Luther played in the Reformation, and then explain how the Reformation challenged and weakened the power of the Catholic Church. So, tasks and due dates to kind of take in mind. I'll talk more about this towards the end, but just as a little bit of a preview. So obviously, you should probably be taking notes as I go through the lecture portion of this. After that, you'll have a few readings to cover, such as some Martin Luther readings and then impacts of the Reformation. And then you'll have one activity with a few different parts, and that's going to be the Padlock Post activity. So I'll talk more about that as we kind of get through the rest of this, but we'll go ahead and start the lecture portion. So again, today is all about the Protestant Reformation, and this is a major shakeup of the different challenges and traditions that Europe kind of holds up until this point. Because remember, the big part of what we're going to be focusing on these next couple of weeks is essentially that prompt. So again, the prompt is evaluate the degree in which the Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, and the Enlightenment challenge traditional doctrines and institutions in Europe. So this is kind of the first of three parts of that, and that's going to be the Reformation. So we'll kind of see how the Reformation kind of challenges that old order. So first off, what are the causes of the Reformation? And again, so what's going to bring us to this movement or this event are going to essentially be three things. So first you have the Black Death. And one thing you kind of have to understand about disease and plagues especially is that when something like a plague comes through Europe during this time period, a lot of people think that it is caused by, God's anger because, again, they don't know about germs. They don't know about microorganisms yet. So the whole question is, what did we do to deserve this? How have we angered God? So when the Black Death rolls through and kills a third of Europe, people start asking questions. What are we doing wrong? Why are we being punished? And that really asks a lot of Europeans to ask a lot of questions, especially in the direction of the church, because it is the Roman Catholic Church who's kind of the spiritual leader of Europe. And if you have this massive cataclysm happening, people are going to want answers, especially from the church. The second thing is the Renaissance, especially that concept of humanism. And again, you do have some notes on the homepage for this unit in case you need to go back and look to the Renaissance and humanism. But essentially, people kind of start looking around and they kind of look at more of the secular aspects of what's around them. And that really makes them more curious about the world around them. And again, they start asking questions. They start looking for different answers than what's already been provided for them. And then finally, and this is really what's going to trigger this, the corruption within the Catholic Church. And you have to kind of understand they're powerful, they're wealthy, and that usually leads to some form of corruption. So that's kind of where our story starts. The whole point of the Protestant Reformation is to reform or attempt to reform the Catholic Church. Because again, they're wealthy, they're corrupt, they're kind of everything. They kind of become something that is the opposite of what religion should be. So people like Martin Luther, who we'll talk about later, and others, they want to, at first attempt, try to change the church's ways. So what Martin Luther tries to do is he writes 95 theses or complaints about the Roman Catholic Church, and he posts them on the church doors in Wittenberg, Germany. And because of Gutenberg's printing press, his ideas start to spread amongst Europe. And people really, really like his ideas. But unsurprisingly, the church doesn't. So they try him, they find him guilty, and instead of being exiled, he actually gets taken in by a bunch of German princes who really like his ideas. So this is kind of where the Reformation officially starts. These German princes who support him, they issue a formal protest against the church, saying that the Pope was challenging their political authority and that the church kind of needs to change. So that's kind of where you get the term Protestants, as in Protestant Christianity. It comes from the word protest. So a lot of these people who start to protest the church will kind of spawn the beginnings of Protestantism. So you'll also get other factions. You get Lutheran, you get Calvinism, you get all these other factions. So even though this starts off as a chance to reform the Catholic Church, it ends up creating a schism within Christianity. So instead of there just being one form of Christianity in Europe, you end up having multiple. And what kind of creates a bigger issue with this, or what kind of makes it spread, is that it's not just the peasants, it's not just the common folk. The hierarchies, so kings, they start doing this as well. Henry VIII, he wanted to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon. Divorce is highly frowned upon, and back then it was very forbidden in the Catholic Church. So Henry, who is upset because he can't get a divorce, he decides that he'll break away from the Catholic Church and he'll make his own church. So that's how we get the Anglican Church of England. And that's a video, but you can go back and look at that if you have time. But anyways, so the big thing that you need to understand is that even though this starts off as a way of reforming the church, it creates a giant schism where you end up having all these different types of Christianity. And they all kind of have their own basic beliefs. And they all have their own basic concepts of, who has authority in the church, how should they practice their religion. So, in response to this, the Roman Catholic Church does try to reform because they're starting to lose a lot of church members. And I mean a ton of them, a massive amount of them. And the church decides to try to eliminate a lot of these theses or complaints that Luther and a lot of other people had. And this is known as the Counter-Reformation. They also form what's going to be known as the Jesuits in order to try to reconvert some of these Protestants. So the church does try to reform, but it's already a little too late. And this is kind of the big deal, and this goes back to our essential question for this unit. So essentially, the Reformation challenges traditional doctrine, and it challenges these institutions like the Roman Catholic Church because it essentially ends church unity in Europe. So all this power, all this authority the Roman Catholic Church has, it starts to deteriorate. It starts to break away because all these people start making their own denominations of Christianity. So that's how the Reformation really challenges these old ways. It challenges the church, and it really starts to erode a lot of that power and authority it has. So you start to see the decline of the Roman Catholic Church. So granted, they're still going to be around. Even today, they have a large influence, but they're not going to have the power and authority they had back during the Dark Ages. This is the beginning of the end for that kind of influence that they have. So that's kind of the important thing to understand. All right, so for the rest of the week, you have a couple different tasks. So first off, you will need to read the additional readings in Module 1 before doing the Padlet post. That talks more about Luther and some of the impacts of the Reformation. You also need to complete a Padlet post. All right, so you will need to pick out which theses of Martin Luther, which will be in the readings, you think is the most important. And then you'll also need to explain how what we just talked about challenges traditional doctrine and institutions in Europe. So that'll be the first part of that Padlet posts. And of course, the Padlet link will be found in the module. So you need to complete that by Wednesday, the 4th. Now, the second part, and you'll need to do this by Sunday, you'll need to respond to a classmate. And please make sure that it is a very well thorough response. All right, because this is a discussion. This isn't just write a sentence or two and be done with it. So this should spark more discussion. So you should have that done by Sunday the 7th. And then if you want, there are more supplementary websites on the module, some more resources to kind of delve into just in case. So that is all for the lecture and content. If you have any questions, again, email me, and I hope you all have a great week. So see you all again next week.